So let's get started. So my topic obviously is, yes, you need flash. What I see a lot of today in photography are photographs that are similar to these. All right. Now these photographs have a couple of things in common. The first thing that they have in common is that all of them were taken without flash. The second thing that they have in common is that they are all photographs where the conditions were very high contrast. You have a background which is sunlit, very high exposure, with a subject that's usually in the shade, all right? So you have a tremendous amount of contrast between your subject and your background. And the only thing, when I first look at these photographs, I kind of think, yeah, they're kind of nice, But as I look at them more closely, the one thing that hits me about all of them, to me, they all look washed out, okay? There's no real saturation in the colors. And I see a lot of photography like this today, okay? And these are some of the reasons why. When I ask photographers, when I'm at a wedding and there's another photographer in another room and I'll watch him and I'll see that he's using no flash, I say, oh, I'm curious, what effects are you getting, not to use flash, what do you like about that? And these are probably the most common things that I hear. The first one is I don't like to use flash. I don't like math. That's because I'm not that familiar with math. I'm not that good with math. And so therefore, I stay away from it, all right? If we learn to use flash more and more to where it becomes easy to use, you're gonna love flash, all right? The next thing I hear is I like natural lighting. I like natural lighting too, because there are some instances where natural lighting is going to give you beautiful, beautiful effects. The problem with natural lighting is it's very limited as to when or where you can take photographs, all right? And so I don't want to be limited. I can't be limited if I make my living in photography. If somebody says to me, Manny, I want a family photograph of my family and I at the beach, the only time we can make it is at 1 in the afternoon. My schedule is booked. It's like you either take it or leave it. I'm gonna take it, okay? I wanna get paid. I wanna do what I like to do, photography. Now there are times when I'll say, well, if you wait till the golden hour, that's really gonna be nice. But I had one client that told me, no, I don't want an orange sky. I want a blue sky. We go out sailing and all we see is blue skies. That's what I want in my photograph. So I'm gonna show you what I use, and you're gonna see it really is minimal amount, although I have 2 bags of equipment in the car, just in case something comes up and I need something else, all right? And lastly is I hear people that will say, I get the same effect without it. Now, fortunately, this is the one I hear the least of. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm guilty of this last one. When I first started photography, that was my thing. I can get the same thing without it. That's just plain ignorance, okay? The truth is that you can get so much more by using flash. This is what I normally like to use as far as my equipment. I have my assistant, in this case it's my wife, it can be somebody else. I like to have my wife with me, I like the companionship. But it's basically, for those of you that shoot, they're about the same, Canon, Nikon, they're all the same sizes, Sony. A 600, and I like the 600 because they have the built-in radio transmitter, so you're wireless, and it's not infrared wireless, because that's a nightmare, okay? And then I have a Turbo SC made by Quantum. I really like these a lot. They're really tiny, more than enough power. I can do an entire wedding, and only 1 light will go off. I got 3 others left, okay? And I typically take about 1,000 photographs at a wedding. So I like to use a lot of window light. I love window light, all right? No flash, no reflector, no anything. Now by itself, it's a pretty nice photograph. However, you might say the shadows on the bride's face are a little bit too deep, all right? So what you do is you power up your remote. It's wireless with the flash. You have your assistant stand directly in back of you, all right? And I got this result. I didn't change a thing. All I did was turn on the flash, put it in back of me, so now if the bride is standing here and I'm taking the photograph, I'm getting flat lighting, a broad light, and it's lighting everything evenly. And by doing that, I get that. And if you look, the shadow is still there. We don't want to get rid of shadows. We really don't. Shadows are wonderful. Shadows give us three-dimensional look on a two-dimensional surface, all right? So shadows give us the illusion of depth. Whenever you want to do fill flash, the light should be directly behind your camera, behind you. And the reason for that, fill flash is a broad light across the entire photo. You can also do fill flash on the side where the light is coming from, and that'll give you a little bit more shadow. But in a photograph like this, you have tremendous contrast. The dress, which is in the background, almost completely burnt out, is by the window. That's like 3 stops overexposed, 2 stops overexposed. The shoes are in the foreground, and they're in shadow. As a matter of fact, there's flash. I used flash on this shot here. But it's not to my liking. Your sensor, your camera is trying to expose everything for gray. If it sees white, it wants to make it gray. If it sees black, it wants to make it gray. So it's going to set your camera. It's going to adjust your camera. So what's happening in a case like this is it's seeing that the background is properly exposed, which is the majority of the image area, and the shoes are a small part. So the flash is being cut off before it gives enough light to properly expose your subject. So if you look at the shoes, there's a flash on it, but they're underexposed. They're still dark, right? So what you have to do is you have to fool the flash and the camera. See, because camera has something called ETTL. E stands for evaluative. It evaluates the photograph for you. Isn't that great? The problem is its evaluation is not the same as your evaluation. That's where the problem comes in. Its thinking process is not the same as your thinking process, all right? So what I did was on my remote, I dialed +2. In other words, I want the flash to overexpose the photograph by 2 f-stops. So then I get that. Now, is it really overexposing it? No, it's not overexposing it, but it thinks it is. What you're doing is you're fooling it, because otherwise, again, it'll read the scene, it'll say, there's enough light there for an exposure, you don't need full power flash. You don't need as much flash. So it cuts off the flash prematurely before it gives it a chance to really saturate it. All right, so indoors, all right, I do weddings. So indoors, now this is the exposure for the background. Again, you want to do this in steps. Otherwise, if you're like me, you're going to get yourself confused, okay? You want to do this in steps. So the first step is expose for the background. Get your background exposure. I can't change those lights, all right? So I have to get the exposure for that. Then I take my subject and I put him wherever I want to put him in the composition. Now, if I leave it at that, look at what we have. It's awful, okay? He's got raccoon eyes, right? Black sockets, no detail. So now what we do is we take our little control unit here, all right, and we put it at plus 0.3 or 0.7, all right? So what am I telling the flash? I want you to overexpose. Compared to the exposure that's in the room, I want you to overexpose by 0.3 or 0.7. You have to play with that. You have to take the picture, see how it looks to you, and then adjust, okay? So now there's enough light. It's not trying to fill in the shadows a little bit. It's actually putting a light pattern on his face. All right, now, another cool feature about these flashes is you can zoom, you know, if any of you have them, you know, when you zoom your lens, you can hear the flash zooming in and zooming out. When you're indoor and you're trying to take a nice wide angle shot with a 14mm lens or 15, whatever it is, and you want to expose, obviously, for your subject. You want to see your subject, right? So what happens? Well, they're midway in the church from left to right. So where are they? They're in the darkest part of the church, right? And you have your windows. Now those are beautiful windows. You have stained glass, there's so much beautiful detail, right? So if you don't use flash, you have to settle for this, all right? Because if you want to, you can start closing down your shutter, your f-stop, or shortening your time. However, it starts to get dark very fast where the bride and groom are. And guess what? You don't have much more, if you compare the two, there's not much more detail between this and this. There's a little bit more, but it's nothing really substantial, right? But if you take the flash that's on your camera and you go ahead and you zoom in, if you look where it says 200, manual zoom, 200, guess what happens? Isn't that cool? Look at the detail. That's the church. When the bride and groom go in the church, that's what they see. They don't see blown out windows. They see beautiful stained glass windows, right? Okay, if you do real estate photography, architectural photography, okay, what do you want? You want the house not to be a house, you want it to be a home. You want people to be emotionally drawn to the house. Oh, that could be me living in that house. The problem is, if I don't use flash, this is what I'm going to get, all right? So I use flash, +1, okay, from across the street. Now, really bad composition. That's okay, that's why we crop photographs, all right? So now, which house would you like? How about that house? Would you like to live in that house? I would. It's nice, it's got that nice warm glow in the inside. Oh, look at that beautiful sunset I'm gonna see every night. The grass is all green, okay? Only one flash.
And you were so far away.
Yeah, but I think I took it like I want to say it's 1600 ISO, if I remember correctly. I mean, the sun had gone down by quite a bit. This is just before it gets black outside, okay? So, now, this is a house in Lithia, which is south of Tampa, $1.5 million. It was listed by Sotheby's for 2 years, never sold. This was 9,000 square feet. I went there with 4 flash units. Gee, do you think you'd like to buy that house instead? Right? Okay, so this is at dusk. Now there's a little bit of retouching done because some of the flashes I was able to crop out, but some, I just couldn't help it. They had to be in the spot that they were in order for me to light. And you can see that I used 4 flashes by looking at the ground, okay? To the right, by the tree, that's 1 flash. To the left, that's flash number 2. Flash number 3 is over here. It was retouched out. It was on a stand, on a black stand. It was retouched. And flash number 4. So what we did was we went at nighttime in downtown Tampa, and we got this. Now this is using 3 lights. One is directly in back of the guy with the trombone in the center. As a matter of fact, this is basically a raw print. It has not been retouched. If you look in back of him, you can see the stand. My assistant is holding a flash off to the left over here. She's easily 15 or 20 feet away. Now, the only thing you have to be careful of is when you start putting groups of people and your flash is off camera, is that somebody's gonna cast a shadow. Remember how I'm showing you all this time? You see the shadow going diagonally across? The same thing is happening here. That woman is casting a shadow on the guy to her side and in back. So what did I do? I just told him to come forward about 6 inches. And there you go. So you do have to be aware of that. When you have groups of people, you got to, in your mind, imagine like an arrow going straight across. Is that arrow going to hit the guy in the back? Then you have to move him. All right, so the next time somebody says to you, I don't use flash, go ahead and tell them, yeah, you need flash, okay? And for those of you that liked the presentation, we do sell DVDs here through B&H. Everything from Jumpstart, which is a beginner's, Skilled, which is intermediate, and then Ultimate if you really want to play around with lights and studio lights, and posing. And if you look at the reviews, we have really very good reviews on them. So again, thank you.
Whether Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.